Hello everybody, my name is Ashton Whitt. The position I'll be applying for is Respiratory Care Supervisor. So question number one, why did you apply for this position? I applied for the position of Respiratory Care Supervisor because I want to use my skills that I've acquired through school and clinically to be an effective member of a leadership team. It's always been a goal of mine. Question two, what makes you more qualified for this position than other applicants? I believe that along with my experience in the field, I have the personality traits to lead effectively. I consider myself to be personable, communicative, and I tend to try to de-escalate situations, and I want to always promote best practice in the department and for me personally. Question three, explain a time when you had to deal with a difficult situation. I was involved in a clinical situation where there was not a clear role as a leader. I was called to a room as a respiratory therapist and to where the patient was rapidly declining, respiratory wise. There was another respiratory therapist around the bed, and there were several nurses, and nobody was doing anything. I saw that nobody was doing anything. I knew what I was supposed to do, and I simply took initiative. I decided to lead by example, and I stated to everyone generally in the room to call a rapid response for the patient so that the ICU team, the critical care team, could come and assess this declining patient, rapidly declining patient. And I decided to do my job. And that's typically how I tend to want to lead, is lead by example. So what I did was I started essentially a respiratory resuscitation. I grabbed an ambu bag and I began rescue breaths for the patient because he was declining in a respiratory status. So with that being said, the second I did that, I grabbed the ambu bag, I turned the oxygen on, and I began breathing for the patient. And I looked around, and immediately people started falling into place. I had people helping with the resuscitation box, or another respiratory therapist. Nurses started to grab medications and look through the charts, and people started to communicate very well. And all I did was say, we need to call a rapid response, and then began to work. So I consider that a good example of leading by example. Regarding that specific situation, upon beginning the rescue breaths and watching everybody fall in line and do our job, we did everything we possibly could to save this patient's life. The patient survived and was stabilized and transported to ICU. Just another situation of why leadership could be so important. It's question number 4. Have you ever been in a leadership role before? I have. I've been in many leadership roles, many different ways of leadership and different occupations and things like that. One specific one that I can think of is when I was involved in the shared governance team at a previous hospital. Now, my personality is I've always been the one to take initiative and do what I think is right. So if I believe that something might be off or wrong, I tend to try to speak up at least a little bit and get my point across, because if I think it's wrong, I won't allow myself to just stand by. So being a part of the shared governance team, I had the opportunity to gather information and ideas from coworkers about potential problems and changes that they wanted to make in the department. So my coworkers would often come to me and offer their perspectives on many different topics. It was my job to congregate these topics and thoughts and present them to the management in an effective way so that the management could take into account what their workers feel and think. So this was a very interesting, very fun process. It was great being a part of this process, being a part of the team. This specific shared governance position led me to the conclusion that I should take the next step in a leadership role. So question number 5. Describe who you are and where your values align in 5 words. I wish I could elaborate on this, but we'll stick to those 5 words. So a sentence about me is I've always considered myself to be a helpful person. I want to understand people and how they feel, and I want to offer helpful advice or information that may benefit them or others. That's just a simple part of my personality. 5 specific words that describe me, I would say, are integrity. That's a big one. Compassion, ambition, logic, and organization. Those 5 words describe me pretty well, almost as a whole. Question number 6. What is your greatest strength and greatest weakness? My greatest strength is my ability to communicate. I try to follow a simple guideline on professional communication. And in 2 words, you could describe this as problem, solution. If there's a problem brought to my attention, the problem is discussed, and then immediately possible solutions. I try to discuss the problem fully, and then immediately get to the solution aspect of it, because that's the most effective way I feel like to communicate in a professional manner. Question number 7. In your perspective, what is constructive criticism? Constructive criticism is the ability to offer information to someone who was previously without that information while keeping a positive mindset and presenting it as almost a growing process, and as well as keeping yourself on that person's level, such as saying to somebody, oh, so when you do this, I've always found it better to do this. I've done them both ways, and it seems better to me that this is the right way to do it. When even if one way is wrong and one way is right, it's never good to say that in front of somebody. It's good to get that information across, but maybe at a different time when you aren't, they might take it as you talking down to them. So a different time or at some point in the conversation, it's all about feeling the conversation out. It should be addressed that this is not the right way to do something, and there is a clinical right way to do things, because often in healthcare there is one right way to do things or several right ways to do things, and wrong ways to do things. Question number 8. How will your capstone project and experience make you a more qualified candidate? My capstone project is to create a patient-driven protocol based on bronchodilators to present to a team of leadership for the potential use in their hospital when they previously didn't have one. This project is going to give me great experience in the aspect of writing protocols and writing new information for a hospital to use, which is really exciting. Question number 9. Describe any professional development that would be needed for this position. I believe that the development that I will need, because there will always be some, is to understand the department as a whole and how it works. Know the ins and outs, all the protocols, all the information, all of the ins and outs, the money, every single aspect of the department. Once I fully understand that, I will work hard to gather that information quickly. That should be the first step in the process. And I believe I can perform any job asked of me at that point. Question number 10. Are there any employment expectations that you know you meet for this position? I believe I have strong leadership abilities and I'm a well-organized individual. I have experience with different respiratory care departments and can offer unique information for the benefit of this department. Having read through the job description, I can assure you that I will exceed in this position. Thank you. That's all.